Good morning and welcome everyone to our Cultural Integration Fellowship. The Cultural Integration Fellowship was founded in 1951 by Haridas and Bina Chaudhuri as a center of universal religion and spiritual practice. In keeping with the spirit of unity and in diversity, we honor the spiritual traditions of diverse cultures. We believe that the great spiritual need of the time is to affirm our faith in one universal truth, which different religions call by different names. Okay, this morning we are observing World Religions Day. I would like to specially thank Nushin Mavadat for organizing this wonderful program for us. Steve Sarowitz will speak on religion as a cause of unity, and Diane LaRue will MC the program. Thank you for being here with us on this special occasion. Before we start, I would like to quote, "Let us begin by joining our voice with the eternal song of wisdom." The great poet Rabindranath Tagore expressed that wisdom by saying, "Shimar majhe ashim tumi, bachao apon shur, আমার মধ্যে তোমার প্রকাশ, তাই এত মধুর." The infinite sings its song in the soul of the finite, and that is why life is so beautiful. The infinite whispers its message of immortality in the inner silence of man, and that is why life is so glorious and loving. May all the actions that we perform today be joyful expressions of our love for all. Om Shatyam Shivam Sundaram. God is the unity of truth, beauty, and love, peace, justice, and freedom. May God shower his blessings upon each of you. Please welcome Diane LaRue.
Thank you so much, Rita. That was
Thank you, Diane.
quite lovely. I wanted to make note of your beautiful physical gathering space, which usually we're meeting together in person, and I've been a guest there several times. And I just wanted to say that it brings an illustration of the philosophy because it's, you guys, for those of you who have not been there, it's in San Francisco, and the physical place is just embedded in the midst of spiritual and cultural diversity. So they're located right across from the Golden Gate Park, the Japanese Tea Garden, the California Academy of Sciences, and my favorite, the Conservatory of Flowers, which show the beauty and diversity like maybe no words can. So I just wanted to say that they have been at the crossroads of integration for those that they serve, and they've been offering their services since 1956. So I just wanted to have us picture, this beautiful spot in San Francisco, even though we're not physically there together today. So we have a wonderful program on this auspicious occasion to observe World Religion Day, and we're joining numerous communities in perhaps some 80 countries around the world. So they also honor this day, January 17th. As Rita mentioned, the theme today is religion should be the cause of unity. And I'd like to even more powerfully say that it must be the cause of unity. And we have a beautiful program planned, and it incorporates prayer, reflection, music, and of course, our wonderful speaker, Mr. Steve Sarowitz. A lot of people would say that the purpose of World Religion Day is to be the chief instrument for the establishment of order in the world, to remind us about this, and to remind us about the tranquility of people, a celebration of spiritual heritage and of humankind and all of its diversity. So even though it's just one day, I'd like us to think about it as a launching pad, as a message that we can hold dear to us as we go on throughout the year. It's nice that it's at the beginning of the year because we can have this thought throughout the year. As we gather together now in this spirit of love and unity, we can start with the purity and the gentleness of children, of young children. So the first video that we'll share illustrates these children calling for people of all religions to gather in a spirit of friendliness. So with your forgiveness, I will screen share. It'll take me 2 steps, but I'm going to share with you now. And I'm going to just sort of start with this beautiful little message again of our theme. We'll be reminding each other of this theme throughout the day. And we have this little logo that we created to keep this at our foremost thoughts. So here we go with this lovely little piece.
Consort with the followers of all religions, all religions, all religions, in a spirit of friendliness, all friendliness and fellowship. Consort, consort, consort with all, in a spirit of friendliness. Consort, consort, consort with all, in a spirit of friendliness. Consort, consort, consort with all, in a spirit of friendliness. In a spirit of friendliness. Consort with the followers of all religions, all religions, all religions, in a spirit of friendliness, all friendliness and fellowship.
So every year, as we mentioned before, it's usually on the 3rd Sunday in January where people come together to honor World Religion Day. And I resourced many different places. According to Wikipedia and other places, the day was originally a Baha'i observance, which began in 1950, inspired by the principles of the oneness of religion and of progressive revelation, which describe religion as evolving continuously throughout history, and that the spiritual principles underlying the world's religions are harmonious, illustrating how religion plays a significant role in unifying humanity. Today, World Religion Day has been described as a Baha'i-inspired idea that has actually taken on a life of its own because its observance is no longer confined to the Baha'i community where it originally took place. An increasing number of observances are independently organized by interfaith or multi-faith coalitions. So in addition to talking and listening to people from different faith backgrounds, we not only understand the basic tenets of other faiths, we can also learn to work together to play a significant role in unifying humanity and evolving towards a more mature and peaceful global society, which, as we all know, is more relevant today than ever. So in accordance with today's theme, again, which is religion should be the cause of unity, our second video underscores this spiritual heritage of mankind, humankind, honoring the organic development of world faiths. So this little piece is called Progressive Revelation.
Blessed are the ones who seek the attributes of Brahman, and together we all say Namaste. Namaste, Namaste, Namaste. Blessed are the children of God. Blessed are the ones who seek enlightenment are the ones who know that Christ died for their sins, and together we all say hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Blessed are the children of God. Blessed are the ones who know the brotherhood of man, and together we all say, Inshallah. Inshallah, inshallah, inshallah. Blessed are the children of God. Blessed are the ones who enter through the gate, and together we all say, Yalilullah, 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 Yalilullah. Blessed are the children of God. Blessed are the ones who unite humanity, and together we all say, Yabahawalabha, 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 Yabahawalabha,
Well, I hope you enjoyed the musical, introductions. And next, Rita had also mentioned that we have received numerous messages from our leaders. And the first one is a message from Mr. Michael Pappas, who is the executive director of the San Francisco Interfaith Council. And so he has recorded a message for us. So I will play that for you now.
Greetings. My name is Michael Pappas, Executive Director of the San Francisco Interfaith Council. Today, I bring to you the prayers and best wishes of our city's 800 communities of faith and religious institutions on the occasion of this auspicious observance of World Religions Day here in San Francisco. For over 3 decades, the San Francisco Interfaith Council has brought people of different faiths together to celebrate our rich spiritual and religious traditions, to build understanding, and to serve our community. The theme of this year's World Religion Day, Religion Should Be the Cause of Unity, is of particular significance considering the fragile place in history we find ourselves today. An unprecedented global pandemic, and a nation wrought with political strife, economic iniquity, and racial division. In the midst of this coronavirus pandemic, faith leaders have risen to the occasion by cultivating community in the midst of isolation through their tireless and seamless transition to online worship and virtual ministry, never ceasing to provide spiritual care, comfort, and essential needs for the vulnerable and disenfranchised. Equally, they have exercised their prophetic voice in speaking truth to power, advocating in matters of social justice for the least of our brethren. Most importantly, each in their own way has brought comfort in the midst of uncertainty and peace In the midst of the tumultuous barrages of images of pain and suffering we witness daily in the media. No doubt, this pandemic, which more often than not feels beyond human control, has humbled us and catalyzed a renewed need to entreat that power that is greater than us, not only to cope, but to give hope. In fact, this pandemic has been a stark reminder of our need to be dependent upon one another and that creative presence that redeems and sustains us all. Our prayer for each of you on the occasion of World Religion Day in San Francisco is a simple one. The refrain of our timeless interfaith anthem, "Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me." Thank you.
So that was Mr. Michael Pappas, the Executive Director of the San Francisco Interfaith Council. So now what we're sharing is the wonderful message from the San Francisco Mayor London Breed. And this is a very small writing. It's not intended for you to have to read this, but I thought I would just share, I'm also holding it here, and I thought I would just share the central message that Mayor Breed is sharing with us today, which is, whereas San Francisco joins with its faith communities to celebrate the ideals of finding harmony and common ground between religions towards creating a greater sense of unity and peace. So that's a lovely message from San Francisco Mayor Breed. We also have a letter from U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein, and I have this right here. And we just got this in a couple days ago. And part of her wonderful message for us today is that, as a United States Senator from the state of California, I wish you a joyous celebration as you reflect on the ways faith can heal divisions and bring to our world together. Best wishes, Dianne Feinstein. Also, we have a message from the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. This is another letter that we received. And she wanted to make sure that we shared with you today about your celebration today serves as a reminder that we must all take responsibility for making the world a better place for our children and for generations to come. So that's from Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Okay, we're going to go back to music now, and I want to prepare you that we have an opera singer. And her name, she's a soprano, and her name is Susanna Politizia. And the pianist accompanying her, his name is Dmitry Kogan. And we wanted to share this piece because it was originally performed at the Cultural Integration Fellowship on March 20th, 2019. So that physical space that I described earlier, well, now you'll be able to see the beautiful interior of that space. So this piece is called "It Was Not the Wind Blowing from the Heights," and the composer is Rimsky Karamazov, and the words are authored by Leo Tolstoy. So here will be our opera singer for today. I hope you enjoyed that bit of opera today. And now I get to introduce this wonderful man, Mr. Steve Sarowitz. And I'd like to just give a personal introduction of him. He is a billionaire founder and chairman of a company called Paylocity, which is a leading US provider of payroll and human resource solutions. I particularly like the human resource solutions part of that company. This renowned entrepreneur is ranked as one of the world's most successful by Forbes magazine, but perhaps even more importantly, Steve is a philanthropist, a philosopher who's extremely passionate about eradicating prejudice and all kinds of prejudice. This includes his focus is a lot primarily on racial, national, religious, gender differences, and Steve is especially attuned to the needs of youth. His family foundation supports, I don't know, what is it, Steve, like 50 causes, including programs helping orphans, foster children, and refugees. And to add to all of this wonderful work to serve humanity, Steve in recent years has tackled a new career. He is a filmmaker and executive producer. And I've had the chance to see one of his wonderful films called The Gate. He's partnered recently with a company called Wayfair Studios, and he executive produced a huge hit movie called The Clouds, and it's particularly an important film for young people. He also heads a new film production company called Spring Green Films, which tackles more biographical oriented content. And this is the company that produced that film, The Gate, which some of you may have seen. That, by the way, for those of you who are familiar with this film, it's reached almost 500,000 viewers just on YouTube streams alone, which is wonderful. So among a host of all of these philanthropic activities, I just wanted to mention one more, that Steve serves on the board of the National Center for Arts and Technology, because it's just such a wonderful combination, art and technology. And if you're trying to reach youth and you're trying to eradicate prejudice, what better way to do it than in the combination of art and technology? They build training centers in urban areas throughout the country. So Steve joins the Baha'i community in his efforts to share his growing understanding of universal divine principles, like, oneness of humankind, which of course includes the unity of religion. And even though Steve lives in Highland Park, Illinois, with his wife and kids, he's joining us today from sunny Southern California. But Steve, I just wanted to let you know that you guys aren't the only ones, because up here in San Francisco, it's like a summer day as well. So I think California, if you're lucky enough to be in California, we're having a sun off. We're both really enjoying this beautiful and incredible weather. So without any further chatting on my part, I'd like to turn it over to Steve.
So thank you very much. The answer is it's probably closer to 100 organizations. That's the practical side of my faith. But I am a Baha'i, and I believe in the oneness of religion. I was raised Jewish. I have a Catholic wife. I have friends and business partners of all faiths, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, you name it, and no faith. To me, as a Baha'i, the most important point is that we're one human family. But since we're specifically talking about religion, and religion being a unifier, why do we have to talk about that? That's really an interesting question, is why are we even talking about religion and unity? We shouldn't have to. Religion almost literally means unity. It's about unifying humanity. What did Jesus teach? What did Moses teach? What did Muhammad teach? What did Baha'u'llah teach? Every one of them taught love and unity. Every one of them taught the golden rule: love thy neighbor, prefer one's brother over oneself. None of us truly believes unless we wish for his brother what he wishes for himself. And yet, somehow we put extra things into that sentence, some little qualifiers. I love my brother as long as they're white. I love my brother as long as he's a brother, not a sister. I love my brother as long as he's that religion or this nationality or this economic. So we have these little qualifiers. And one of the biggest qualifiers is religion. I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew, and so my religion is right and yours is wrong, or my religion is right and I'll respect you, but I don't believe the same thing as you. And that's interesting to me as a Baha'i, because why are we our religions? I was raised Jewish, and I was Jewish because I was born Jewish. And nothing against Judaism. I love Judaism. My family, who I'm very close to, they're all Jewish. I believe as a Baha'i that everyone has a right to worship in the way they see fit. But the question is not whether you have a right to worship a certain way, it's why. And so why do you believe what you believe? What Baha'u'llah says is that we should each search for truth without prejudice and ask ourselves, what do we believe? And eventually, when I got around to asking what I believed when I was in my 40s, I found that I believed in Baha'u'llah. I studied his works. I studied his teaching, the idea that there should be no more racism, no more sexism, no more nationalism, and no more religious prejudice. But the thing that really got me was something we've touched on today, and I want to go into a little bit more detail, the idea of progressive revelation. One of the big problems in religion is that people own their religions. I'm a Christian and I come through Jesus, and I'm a Jew and I come through Moses. I'm a Muslim and I come through Muhammad, as if Muhammad only came for some people or Jesus came for some people. But it's clear if you read the writings that all of them came for everybody. And that's in the Baha'i writings, that all of them came for everybody. So how could this be? Why are some people Muslims and some people Christians and some people Jews? Did Muhammad really come for the Jews? And the answer is yes, according to Baha'u'llah. What he says is that one God has sent all the messengers. Now think about it. Every major religion says there's one God, and most of us who are religious consider ourselves monotheists, and you cannot logically consider yourself to be a monotheist unless you believe in one God. So there cannot be a Christian God, and a Muslim God, and a Jewish God, and a Baha'i God. There's simply one God. And according to Baha'u'llah, that God has sent messengers throughout all the ages, throughout all eternity. And so I'll go back a few years to start this, and you can go back further all the way to Krishna, but I'll start at Moses. Moses, 3,500 years ago, comes, and there's a pattern that happens. God sends a messenger. That messenger suffers greatly. Moses had to run for his life with his people out of Egypt. And yet, what happens is they plant a seed, and with every religion, it happens the same way. The messenger comes, and then they're followed, not necessarily day one or day two, but hundreds of years later, this golden age grows like a tree. You know, a tree doesn't just instantly appear in your yard. It starts with a seed or an acorn, and then it grows over many, many years into a towering oak tree or an evergreen. And the same way with religions, they grow over time. And so at first, there's just a few fervent and usually very persecuted believers, and then eventually it grows into a burgeoning civilization. In the case of Moses, it was the great kingdom of Israel. Who'd have thought these slaves would come out of Israel and have this incredible kingdom of Israel, which lasted for centuries? The next one after Moses is Zoroaster. He comes 500 years later in Persia. They try to kill him, the priests do, 3 times. They jail him. Nothing works. Eventually, after about 10 years, the king adopts his new faith. And that becomes the seed that grows the incredible Persian Empire, the greatest empire of its day, an empire that lasted over 1,000 years. 500 years after Zoroaster comes Buddha. And a lot of us now think of Buddha as this friendly little statue, but he was a full messenger of God. His religion was like any other religion. It started slowly and grew. And eventually, hundreds of years after Buddha, it peaked with the great Maurya Empire, which hit over 2 million miles at its peak. And it ran very well using Buddhist law, just like the Zoroastrian Empire, the Persian Empire was using Zoroaster's laws, just like the Kingdom of Israel was using Moses's laws. And that empire, that great Buddhist empire, like I said, was the greatest empire of its day, the Maurya Empire. Next, 500 years after Buddha comes Jesus Christ. And Jesus comes to this place now that's very downtrodden under the Roman Empire. He comes to a place where the Jews are not doing nearly as well as they were doing during their peak. And he comes and he brings this incredible new message. And what happens? He only ministers for 3 years. And he's crucified. And the Pharisees and the Romans, they think they're done with him. He's done. We've crucified him. He's done. this thing that was threatening us is all gone and there's nothing to it. And of course, 2,000 years later, we're still talking about Jesus. And they only mentioned the Pharisees as Jesus's enemies. They were the ones on top then. But now Jesus is revered by billions of people, including Baha'is and Muslims all over the world. And what goes behind Jesus is what grows slowly is this incredible Christian empire, the Byzantine Empire, and it grows and grows and grows. And 300 years after Jesus, you start seeing the fruits of his teaching, which is this incredible empire running on Christian law. And this Byzantine Empire lasts for over 1,000 years. Can you imagine that? From this 3 years of ministry comes this great and wonderful Christian empire that's going on. It's inspired by Jesus. It's inspired by his beauty, by his truth and justice and love and compassion and mercy and everything that he taught, all the messengers taught. 600 years after Jesus comes Muhammad. He comes to a place that's so terrible that they're burying their daughters alive. It's so warlike, it's so divided, much like you see the world today, unfortunately. And Muhammad comes to this terrible place and he starts teaching what Jesus Christ taught, what Buddha taught, what Krishna taught, what Moses taught, what Zoroaster taught. And he teaches love and truth and compassion and mercy and justice. And these warlike people, very quickly, they unite the whole Arabian Peninsula. It quickly becomes the golden age of Islam. It lasts for over 500 years. And during this golden age, they reinvent virtually every field of human endeavor. So many great advances come from this time: algebra, algorithms, and chemistry, alchemy, and universities, and surgical instruments. Really, literature and arts, all of this, architecture. So many brilliant things come out of this time. And what happens to Christianity? It's fallen in at this time to the Dark Ages. Often in the West, we think of that time, which is between the 7th and 13th centuries. We think of it as a very dark time because it's the Christian Dark Ages, but it's the Muslim Golden Age. And of course, we need to maybe expand our thoughts and look at the world more globally and understand that there's only one God. And so we always look at the light. And how does Christianity come out of the darkness? How do we get to this modern age? We're no longer in the Muslim Golden Age, and we're no longer in the Christian Dark Age. So Christianity comes out of the Dark Ages with the Renaissance. And who's helping with the Renaissance? Well, of course, the Muslims. The Muslim Moors are hugely instrumental. They take over Spain for the better part of 700 years. And so a lot of that Muslim know-how and inspiration goes into Christian Europe. And one of the biggest things they taught them to do is bathe. Muslims at that time had cities of a million people, and the Christians were not as successful at that time. And so the Christians reboot and with the Renaissance, and Christians take over the entire world. Virtually, they conquer most of North and South America and Africa and Asia. And so Christianity, which had been fairly concentrated, was now spread. The gospel had been spread in just a few hundred years all over the world by the mid-1840s. And so the mid-1840s comes, and there's a great expectation of something in Christianity and Judaism and Islam. All over the world, people are expecting in the 1840s a great redeemer. The Jews were expecting the Messiah. They expected him to come in the year 5600, the Jewish year 5600, according to their book, the Zohar, and there are movements in North Africa and Persia and Southern Europe. And they were all expecting the Messiah. They were expecting to be brought back to what's now Israel, and they were expecting a technological revolution. Well, I don't want to ruin the suspense, but the Jews didn't see the Messiah in the 1840s as they expected, but they did get 2 consolation prizes. The first consolation prize is the return to Israel. Now that starts in the year 1844 with the Ottoman Edict of Toleration. They just start moving back, and by 1948, over 600,000 Jews had moved back, and today over 6 million, and the modern state of Israel comes about. But what about the technological revolution? Well, in 1843, they said they were going to shut down the United States Patent Office. Everything had been invented. And so in this old age that we're no longer in, people thought, and they were right, actually, everything for that age had been invented. But a new age was to come. We have computers. 75% of everything that's been invented in the entire history of the world has been invented since 1844. The pace of invention goes up 100-fold. It's not just computers, cars, trucks, planes. Travel is revolutionized. Education is revolutionized. Communications, instant communications, everything is revolutionized in this new age, much to the surprise of the US Patent Office. So the Jews get 2 out of 3, but they don't see the Messiah, so we'll move on from the Jews. What are Christians expecting in the 1840s? Well, literally all over the world, in Germany, in France, in Holland, in Switzerland, in Sweden, in England, in America, in virtually every major Christian country, many, many countries. There's separate movements that pop up in the 1840s waiting for the return of Christ. And these are big names behind this. I don't know if you've ever heard of Martin Luther. Martin Luther predicts the return by 1840. John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist faith, he predicts it by 1836. Joseph Smith and the Mormons predicting all the time. He says in 1843, there are those of you who will not pass away before Christ returns. And then he predicts that if he was alive in 1891, he'd be 85 years old, he would actually talk to Christ himself. Of course, Joseph Smith was killed that year in 1844. And the biggest one of all in this country, in America, is a man named William Miller. Starts out as a farmer, reads the Bible intently, comes up with a theory that Christ will return in 1844. The 2300-day prophecy, Daniel 8:14, that's what Miller used to base this on. And it was so popular, it was actually printed in many Christian Bibles. Miller got 100,000 followers, and they were all waiting on October 22nd, 1844, for Christ to return. And they waited all night long, and the sun rose. And it's still called to this day the Great Disappointment. People were heartbroken that they didn't see the return of Christ. Interestingly enough, Miller didn't see something else in the Bible either, and that is the 10 references in the Bible to the year 1260. 1260 days, 42 months, 3.5 days, half a week, all throughout the Bible. 1260, 1260, 1260, particularly in the prophetic parts of the Bible. Revelation 11 talks about 2 witnesses taking over the holy city for 1260 days, but that didn't mean anything to Miller. Nor does it mean anything to most Christians today. And Miller, again, experienced a great disappointment in his religion, and all his followers broke up, although there's some followers today even, some split off groups like the Seventh-day Adventists and the Jehovah's Witnesses, who really can trace their roots back to Miller. All these Christian movements experienced the great disappointment, and we're done, except going back to that year 1260, because that year 1260 means something. The Bible actually is telling us over and over again to look at the year 1260. And the year 1260 means something to Muslims. The year 1260 is the year 1844 in the Muslim calendar. And in the year 1844 in the Muslim calendar, in Persia, almost every Persian Muslim was waiting for the return of the 12th Imam. Disappeared in the year 260, according to the Quran prophecy. He's supposed to return in 1260, 1844. And they're waiting, and most of them are waiting for a 1,000-year-old man to return. And that, just so you know, did not happen, because there's no such thing as a 1,000-year-old man. They thought he went into hiding. Today, those same people are waiting for an almost 1,200-year-old man, and that will not happen either, because there's no such thing. But there was a group called the Shakis, and they were waiting for a young man, and that does happen. A young man comes May 23rd, 1844, and that young man is actually buried right behind me in this beautiful shrine, the Shrine of the Bab in Haifa, Israel. He declares on May 23rd, 1844, right on time. And he says he's the promised one of Islam. And he gets over 100,000 followers in Persia. The government is worried about losing control. They kill the Bab. They kill over 20,000 of his followers, desperately trying to hold on to power, desperately trying to convince their people, no, he never came. Muslims are waiting actually for two messengers. They expect the 12th Imam or Imam Mahdi, depending on which type of Muslim you are, whether you're a Sunni or Shia Muslim. And that herald prophet will herald the return of Isa, or Jesus. And it's supposed to be in either 9 or 19 years. And so it was that 9 years after the Bab declared, one of his followers, a nobleman by the name of Baha'u'llah, got a vision. He had been arrested, and he was put in a place called the Black Pit with 100-pound chains on his shoulders. And it was there in the Black Pit in 1852, almost 1853, in the 9th year after the Bab had declared, that Baha'u'llah got his vision, that he was the promised one of all faiths. He was released from that terrible prison, and he was exiled for 40 long years. And during those 40 long years, he wrote the equivalent of 100 Qurans, 60 Christian Bibles. And he said that we're one human family. He said he'd come for all of us, and that we must get rid of all of these fake divisions we have, these divisions of religion, of race, of nationality, of gender, that it was time, finally, after thousands of years, for humanity to put war behind us, that we must search for truth, and that we must understand the oneness of religion and the oneness of God and the oneness of humanity, that no longer could we be in our tribes fighting each other. And in this time of nuclear war, nothing could be scarier than for us to be in our tribes. Nothing could be scarier. Look what happened in America last week. This is the cost of division. This is the cost of strife. Is this the price we're still willing to pay? Or can religion be a force for unity? Can religion be the force it was meant to be, a force of love, as taught by Jesus, as taught by Moses, as taught by Muhammad, as taught by Buddha? All of them are trying to tell us the same thing. None of them was saying, I'm right and they're wrong. So we need to understand that religion must be a force for unity. Abdul-Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, said this. He said that if religion is a source of strife and conflict, it's better to have no religion. But religion is the salvation of all humanity when used properly. It's the most powerful tool. It gives us our vision for life. It gives us our guidance for life. It gives us our inspiration for life. Without religion, we're lost. We have no guidebook on how to live our lives. We have nothing to unify us. Without religion, we'll splinter even worse. We need religion, but we need religion of love, as Jesus Christ taught it, as Muhammad taught it, as Buddha taught it, and yes, as Baha'u'llah taught it too. And he said, don't love me any more than any of the previous messengers. Love us all, because we're one. Their message, he says, is one. And each one of them has come in their age with their message, and all of the spiritual teachings are one. It is only the teachings for each age that are different, and it's because of humanity being different. And should we fight over these things? When the overriding message was love. So if I can leave you with nothing else today, it's this. We are all children of the same God. We live on the same planet. We live in the same age at the same time. And we would be better off together than apart. Why are we divided? And each one of us must ask ourselves, why are we still divided? Why haven't we learned? Some people have gotten so frustrated now that they've blamed God and they've turned from religion altogether. I hope that most of the people on this call are still religious, that we still think religion can help us. And if religion can help us, how can religion help us? It can only help us if it's unified. It can only help us if it's a force for unity and peace. So may religion be a force for unity and peace in 2021. God knows we need it. And with this, I'd like to open it up to questions.
I already have received one. This person is wondering if you might be able to share an example or two, because you've given this wonderful background about progressive revelation, and you've given us sort of the historical perspective. Is there any example that you might be able to think of in the recent past where religion has played a strong role in creating unity for the challenges that we face, maybe perhaps in your local community? If you could now bring it to like what's going on now, that would be really helpful. A couple of people have asked this question.
There's a lot of interfaith now. So it's interesting because interfaith was not even a word prior to the Baha'i era. So from a Baha'i perspective, we're in the Baha'i era since 1844. So the first major interfaith meeting was the Parliament of the World's Religions in 1893, which not coincidentally, in my mind, was the year after Baha'u'llah passed on. That was also the first year that women could vote. So interfaith groups are doing a lot of work, working side by side to fix a lot of issues in the world. Another group that we support with our foundation that focuses on the environment, and it's an interfaith group. One of my friends who's an amazing, Chris Harris, who's an amazing pastor in Chicago, we were part of an interfaith march protesting racism, which he helped organize, and leaders of religions, all different religions, got up and spoke against racism. And that's something where we need to work together. So in any issue that is a modern issue, having faiths work together on it there's plenty of examples of that. And it's very necessary because religion is where your heart is. And so when your pastor or your rabbi, or in the case of Baha'is, if your Baha'i friend asks you to do something, or the pastor you're friends with, then you can do that and work together.
Thank you, Steve. We have another question too, which is something that gives us hope for the future. So we're asked if you can think of a pronounced lesson that we might have learned recently that could be or should be applied in the future.
So 2020 has been, where 2020 was, fairly disastrous year. So it was almost everything that could go wrong did go wrong. But if you look at 2020 and reverse it, there's tremendous hope for the future. So what did we do wrong in 2020 and what can we do right in the future? Well, let's look at the race problem. I'll start with that. And we had in America endemic racism for over 400 years. And so something good that came out of 2020 was that many people who look like me, including myself, who marched and said, this is not something we want. This is not something that's acceptable. And although it's maybe too little, too late in some ways, because we need to fight harder because it's such a big problem and such a terrible, shameful problem that not all of us are treated equal. But more and more white people are waking up and saying, no, this Black person right next to me is my brother, is my sister, and I'm going to fight. And so I have seen huge efforts over the last 12 months. I'm involved, very active in business. My wife and I invested in an impact share fund with the NAACP. I'm just seeing that people are trying to diversify their boards with more women and more people of color. And I'm in Hollywood, and people are talking all the time about having more films about people of color. We personally at Wayfair Studios are doing several projects about people of color. The great astronaut Ron McNair. We're going to do a whole TV series about the Chicago Defender, showing basically the history of America through Black eyes, through its most prominent Black newspaper. So people are doing projects like that. We still need to work because, one of the most damning statistics is that the average white person in America is 100 times richer than the average, 100 times richer than the average Black person. And we know this is not a genetic problem. So what's nice is that people care. We have a long, hard road in front of us. And there'll be plenty of people fighting this because racism is so endemic, so ingrained in our society. There are people who think that this is good and are fighting for it. It's of course not good for anybody. Racism is a blight on all of humanity, according to a recent letter from the Baha'i Universal House of Justice. So that's one thing. Racism, what's good is a lot more people are starting to see that it's a big problem and starting to fight it. It shouldn't have taken riots in the streets to do this. Second of all, politically, we have seen the worst of political strife. Well, maybe not the worst, but we've seen how bad it can get. Hopefully some of us will wake up. Now, as a Baha'i, I'm forbidden from doing partisan politics, which means I can vote, but I'm not allowed to say this candidate is terrible, this party is terrible, I can't join a political party. We have seen people, many, many people, so blinded by their hatred for the other side that they've lost all shred of common decency. I mean, I'll say it, we had people who took over our Capitol building and defecated on the floor, threatened violence, people died. This is not what I expect in America. I'm not criticizing one party or another. I'm saying this behavior is bad behavior. And so what's really bad is people hating more than they love. And politics should not be about hatred. Nothing should be about hatred. Again, going back to what the prophets taught, they all taught love. And then we come to COVID. And again, disunity has hurt us. Disunity has hurt us. So we've seen how our political disunity has hurt America because while we're busy fighting, while we're busy doing unimportant things, because fighting is always unimportant, while we're fighting for our side, we all lose. There is no our side or their side and our side and our side. It's our side is everybody. We're one America. We have to be one America. We all live in the same country. So when we're so busy fighting and breaking off into warring factions, we can't actually do the work of governing the country. And we need to do that, especially during this terrible pandemic. The more unified we are. So we've seen the effects of lack of unity, but yet we've seen the Baha'i writings talk about this. There's two competing things. Right now, there's the disintegration of a faulty old world order, but then there's the growing of the new world order. And the new world order is not the scary thing you read about. It's actually a new world order of love and unity. It's Christ's world order. It's Christ and his teaching of love and unity and grace and justice. That's what this new world order is founded on, and it must be founded on these things. And the old world order is actually the strife and the conflict. It's the old world order that we have everything to fear. And yet, as the old world order is very loudly disintegrating, and we see that in all the headlines, the new world order is growing. And this new world order is exactly what we need. It is love, it's unity, it's kindness. It's a miracle, really. It will be the greatest civilization ever in the history of humanity when we finally make it. So fight for that unity. So that's my long answer to a short question.
You covered a lot of territory in that one. We have another question about what is the significance of the promised one. You used that term, and we have a couple of questions about that.
So every major religion except for the Baha'i faith is waiting for a redeemer. The Hindus are waiting for the 10th avatar, the Buddhists, the 5th Buddha, the Christians and Muslims, return of Christ. The Jews are waiting for the Messiah. What Baha'u'llah said is he was all of that. And he wrote specifically letters to the Pope saying, don't make the same mistake the Pharisees made and reject me without reason. He wrote a letter to the Christians of the world, don't reject me by my name. Essentially, we as Baha'is believe that the promised one has come. So all of these promises and what happens when the promised one comes? Well, in the Bible, it's 1,000 years of peace. And so this day of reckoning, this day of judgment, this day of resurrection has come already. And if we look at the world, we're clearly in a new age. The Bible says, when is this going to come? At the end of the age. It says it over and over again, at the end of the age. And of course, as I mentioned, it says it's going to happen in the year 1260. That the two witnesses, by the way, the Baha'i writings say the two witnesses in chapter 11 of Revelation are Muhammad and Ali. So they're talking about the Muslims, and the Muslim cycle will last for 1260 years. One of the things we have to get away from is this idea of my religion against yours. This is just one faith. And so there's just different chapters to the faith, and they're chapters for all of us. Islam is for all of us. Buddhism is for all of us. Christianity is for all of us, and Baha'i is for all of us. And there's no fight then because it's for all of us. All of this is good, and all of it is for all of us. And so this idea of a promised one, what Baha'u'llah came to do is to tell us this and show us this so we can join together and finally stop this fighting.
Thank you, Steve. And we have time for one more question. And this one might be a nice one. So there's some mention about it's becoming a little more difficult to remain optimistic about our lives and future with all that's going on in the world. So this person asks, what is your personal strategy for renewing hope and rekindling our faith?
I have no shortage of hope or faith. I have Baha'u'llah. I have noticed this amongst Baha'is that it's pretty consistent. Because we've read the writings, and the writings are very hopeful, it says that it will be very dark and then it will be light after darkness. So Baha'is go into the darkness expecting the darkness and then expecting us to come out in the light. If you're a person of faith, whether it be Christian or Muslim or Jewish or Baha'i, I think the deeper your faith is, the more hope you have. Fear is a lack of faith. And I just don't have a lot of fear. I mean, I know it's going to be okay. We are primarily spiritual beings. So if something happens to us physically or financially, that's only on the material world. We only live here for a short while. And so to me, important. We are spiritual beings, and we live with Baha'u'llah literally means the glory of God. So we live in the shadow in the light of the glory of God every day. And to me, just knowing that Baha'u'llah came makes me happy every day. I'm literally joyous every day. And sometimes, I'm human and everything is not always good, but in the end, I'm always happy. It's like I go down and there's a beautiful Baha'i writing about it. One of the Baha'is around the time of Baha'u'llah, and he literally was dragged headfirst and he came out smiling and put in solitary confinement. And what he said is that it seems a little rough on the surface, but underneath it's calm. And that's how I feel every day, that eventually I always come back to happy, and happy is in faith. And honestly, there's a crisis among our youth. And that's one of my big things I'm working on, is that there's a lack of faith among youth. We've walked away from religion saying it's divisive, it's old-fashioned, and I'm trying to tell youth, no, the religion is really the salvation, and you're lost without it. I mean, they've proven it. I'm not saying this. The suicides, the depression, all of the problems you're seeing in record numbers is because they've walked away from faith. And to me, faith makes me happy every day, and I hope it will continue to do so the rest of my life.
Well, I think that all of us today are feeling your faith, your happiness, your positivity to go out and just, do it. Do it now. Steve, thank you so much for sharing with us today, and Rita and the Cultural Integration Fellowship for being the ever gracious hosts that you are. And we hope that all of you have enjoyed our time together, and that you might take with you some of these thoughts to reflect upon about unity. Certainly, Divine Providence has shed its ray of light on this gathering today, providing us with the motivating power that we need to go forward with what we undertake, whether it's in our personal lives or our collective community, because that's the winning combination, our personal transformation as well as going into action into our communities. So we can achieve these goals. We can achieve it. It's possible. We will do it with peace, social justice, and unity for the world, even resolve this pandemic and horrible things that we're facing now. So in order to conclude on a quieter, softer note, we will just have a quiet reflection. And then Rita, I hope you'll join us with a closing remark. So thank you, Steve. I'm going to screen share again.
Thank you for having me. And Rita, particularly, thank you.
Thank you very much. So read the Gospel and the other holy books. You will find their fundamentals are one and the same. Therefore, unity is the essential truth of religion, and, when so understood, embraces all the virtues of the human world. Praise be to God. This knowledge has been spread, eyes have been opened, and ears have become attentive. Therefore, we must endeavor to promulgate and practice the religion of God, which has been founded by all the prophets. And the religion of God is absolute love and unity. Abdu'l Baha.
Thank you, everyone. Especially thank you to Steve and to Deanne and Nusheen for organizing this wonderful program. We are very happy to be observing World Religions Day today in San Francisco. And I think wherever you are, everyone is here from different places. And thank you very, very much for joining us. We invite you to come for our Sunday morning talks. We are offering them via Zoom these days. You can find information on our website. I think most of you have that. Otherwise, you can send an email. Okay, thank you everyone for coming today, and blessings to all of you. Thank you very much.